I can't put that.
Hey, team players, and welcome back. Today, we're sitting here in a really awesome situation. We already have the initial feeds from some great companies like Fantasy Pros sending out who they think the starting spots are. Today's conversation is just preparation for the upcoming fantasy football year. We're talking about 2026 already, some players that we vehemently agree with, vehemently disagree with, because we know that a lot of our audience is going to start doing the best balls as soon as they open up for
We are.
2026, even pre NFL draft and combine. So let's talk about these players where the early consensus is and the
Mm-hmm.
early answers are. So, Bob, I think a logical spot is let's start where everyone naturally goes to, which is the quarterback position. So, or correction,
Yeah.
the quarterback position here, as we look at what Fantasy Pros has as their initial quarterback rankings, we're talking Josh Allen,
Scroll up
May,
a little bit.
Lamar, Burrow, Daniels, Hurts, Dart, Herbert, Mahomes, Dak, and then Trevor Lawrence for your special 11. Off
Mm-hmm.
the page, who are you like, no? And who are you like, all
So
right.
there's a couple things to note here, and I think that one of the biggest things that will be a big shift in how people view the rankings upcoming. Number one, how will Drake May do this week against Denver? I think that will play a lot into how people are going into next season viewing things. The coaching dynamic that's coming to Buffalo will definitely affect how people value Josh Allen, but it won't take him out of the number one spot. It will just
Mm-hmm.
change where people might want to take him. Surprisingly enough, I absolutely I do think that Jackson Dart, for me, while most people will look at this and say, "Oh, this is like really, really high for an early ranking for Dart," but
Yeah.
if you look at the situation and you say they're going into next year, Malik Neighbors will return at some point in time. They're also
Mm-hmm.
going to get a potential top flight wide receiver in this year's draft as well. Couple that with they might be able to re-sign Wandale. They're going to get Cam Scadaboo back at some point during next year as well. Plus, they got a new coach in Harbaugh who wants to bring over Todd Monken. And you have a recipe here where realistically and logistically, uh, Jackson Dart deserves to be high on this list as opposed to back in the past when Anthony Richardson was this high. Jackson Dart deserves to be this high. But the one knock about about Dart and putting him
Yeah.
like over guys like Patrick Mahomes and over guys like Trevor Lawrence is this immediate injury history, right? Is
Oh,
that
yeah.
um, you know, playing a full game is really important from the quarterback position, and the way that he sets himself up. I like where this ranking is at. And again, guys, if you're just tuning in, we're taking a look at the early consensus Fantasy Pros rankings and just talking about some of the players that we like, dislike, or disagree with their rankings that we see so far. One of the players that I really am
Well,
not sure.
let's finish up on Dart before you
Yeah, yeah,
jump
yeah.
around there.
So
So,
Dart, I think, is set up to be very successful this year, and there are spots where if if the offensive line in Philadelphia doesn't improve, and depending on what
mhm.
offensive coordinator goes there, I could absolutely see myself if I wanted to take a quarterback early, taking a guy like Jackson Dart because the situation is one that should be successful for him. And so I think that that's going to be something to keep an eye on there. Mick, I was watching actually. I was watching all of your rankings on BBDMB, and I saw that you and I had a lot of Bears, a couple Jags, and it was rough. It was rough watching that loss by the Bears, just seeing all that money go down the drain. But I mean, I
Yeah,
hope
it
I hope that
was.
you still got a couple rosters left. I know I still have just a couple. We'll see what happens. It's going to be
So
tight.
Bob, your
Um,
answer here is that you're feeling that Dart is a viable spot there at the seventh quarterback.
yeah, and I
Again,
and guys, I would disagree with. So the players that I would really disagree with off this list, my immediate reaction at this point in time in January would be Justin Herbert and Lamar, as well as
see,
Jaden
mine's
Daniels.
May.
I don't want to touch on May at this moment in time for myself. Um, I want to
for
see.
me, it doesn't matter what happens in this AFC Championship game. And Mick, we appreciate all your questions. Your comment. We're going to kind of focus on just focusing on next year for now.
I did see that. It was wild.
Joe, given the fact that this one is going to be rewatched so much, we're going to focus a little bit more on the content than the questions in today's show.
I think what I want to say, though, is that I don't disagree with Drake May being here.
I vehemently do.
I think it's really high, but when I look at the list of players from 1 through 10, the only other person right now that I would put above him would be Joe Burrow. That's the only person on this list based off a situation that I would put ahead of Drake May going into next year. Am I taking a lot of
Bob, that's exactly it. It's the situation for New England is going to have such a massive swing.
There's a lot of moving parts
to next year. They played the softest schedule in the world and had a coach that wanted to run up the score like crazy. The Patriots will not have that opportunity next year. Yes, the Jets will still be a train wreck. Yes, Miami will still be bad. That's only 4 games. They do not get to play the entire implosion of the NFC South again. They're not going to have as easy of a schedule.
This is why I say this, Joe, is that I don't disagree with any point that you're making. I really don't. But what I do say is that I think that he deserves to be in the top.
Deserves to be is are you going to make me points or not? And he ain't gonna.
I think that he deserves to be there because I don't see any of those top 10 guys overperforming beyond expectations, as I don't see Herbert or I don't see Drake May overperforming. And honestly, legitimately speaking, am I taking Drake May? No, I'm probably not taking him at what his value is consensus right now. If he has to be a top 6-round guy like Josh Allen, I'm absolutely not taking him. I would rather wait and see where Joe Burrow falls in early ADPs, et cetera, et cetera. The schedule, Mick, and that's exactly right. What Joe said is absolutely true. The schedule is going to be way tougher for Drake May leading into next year. Not the lack of depth, but the lack of star-powered, wide receivers makes this team one that is very across the board, pretty much even in terms of like offense, right? Is that they're fairly balanced so that like you're never going to get them one way or another offensively. Like if you stop their run, they're just going to throw it to a bunch of random guys. It doesn't matter to them. The way that team works is Drake May, where I'm not taking any of those offensive skill position players that are attached to Drake May necessarily. I don't feel I need to avoid Drake May depending on his cost. But if he goes in the top 5 rounds, I am avoiding him at his cost. And here's
the
why.
major thing that you're missing in this, Bob, at least in my opinion, is that so much of his value and production is from him running. And by definition, he's now a Final Four quarterback. They don't let those run after they make – that's a league-wide standard. Like Lamar's the only one who still runs after making an AFC championship. So you're taking his number one asset and making him just a passing quarterback.
But here's the thing, Joe. You're only taking 4 touchdowns away from him. You're taking 450
it's the
yards.
Yardage you're taking away from.
You're taking away potentially 45 points in yardage, and you're taking away approximately 28 points. So you're taking away approximately 60 to 70 points. And
you're probably taking away 100 in schedule.
But that's the reason why I don't necessarily, because I don't think that any one of these other quarterbacks other than Joe Burrow would be a guy that I would put above him. And here's the thing.
You might say Daniels above him, no doubt.
You might say you'd want Jaden Daniels. You might say you'd want Lamar Jackson. But the issue with Jaden Daniels is that we don't yet fully know what that offense is primarily going to look like again next year, because they have that running game that's consistently in flux. They have Deebo Samuel who's on his way out. They have basically
actually Washington's like the easiest offense to project for next year. They're always going to be losing, and they can't run the ball. That means
you have to ask yourself.
chucking it.
But you have
to
ask
one decent receiver.
if you could have Jaden Daniels or Joe Burrow at cost, I'm taking Joe Burrow at cost 100 times out of 100.
I'd rather take Daniels. Going to be around later.
Okay. But I don't think that Daniels is going to go around later. You're going to see in these, what's up, Jamie? You're going to see in these best ball drafts coming up that Jaden Daniels is going to have a higher value, most likely, than this consensus ranking has it.
I think I have Jaden Daniels as quarterback too, to be totally blunt.
People are going to put him over Drake May. People are going to put him over Lamar Jackson. I'm not shocked at that, but I'm also not going to do that myself. The other person,
I'm also not okay with Lamar being number 3, by the way.
I agree with that. The other quarterback that I have a problem with in this ranking is Justin Herbert. Okay. I do not see a universe where when we come into next season that Justin Herbert would be a quarterback that I would want to take in the top 8 rounds. Because that's, conceivably speaking, if you're thinking consensus rankings and you're looking at Herbert as potentially the 8th quarterback off the board, that's looking at what, around round 7, 8, 9, 10 in drafts. Now, if you scroll down to the next set of quarterbacks, Joe, so we can see 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, I don't see a universe where I would want to take Justin Herbert over Trevor Lawrence going into next year, or over Brock Purdy going into next year, or even going over Jordan Love.
I think that you're missing something here, because
I'm not missing anything.
Herbert, he had no offensive line. They were all hurt. They all come
That's
back
every year. That's every year. Every year they get hurt. You cannot tell me that there is a year where a Chargers offensive lineman hasn't gotten hurt, and then Justin Herbert takes like 47 sacks. Okay, you can't tell me a year in the last 5 years.
Herbert is sack prone more than most because he wants to put the ball downfield. I love that about him.
Looking at the board, Justin Herbert if you go to his best fantasy season, right, where he's chucking the ball, it was back in 2021 for 38 touchdowns. Okay, and he had three touchdowns rushing that year. Every year since then, he has not eclipsed 27 passing touchdowns. Okay. Yes, he limits turnovers, but the one thing that I'm not looking to buy 27 touchdowns in round 8. I'm looking to do that in round 10, round 11, round 12. So I don't have and that's where I find this ranking to be really weird, is I don't think it's worth our time to invest in Justin Herbert over a guy like Jordan Love when there's potentially the same outcome. But what I will say is that where I disagree with these rankings is that I do not think that come draft season that Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, or Caleb Williams will go underneath Justin Herbert. I do think that they're ranking
Caleb Williams is going to end up being like the 5th
I do think that they're ranking Justin Herbert too high in these consensus rankings. And I think that he ultimately ends up in that Jordan Love category, and then you split the difference and you pick whoever you want. I think that's where this ranking is wrong, that Justin Herbert is too high, because almost everybody from Patrick Mahomes down to Caleb Williams is somebody who I can see taking above Herbert in
I agree with that. That tier 3, I definitely think is going to move up as some of these top guys have moved down. And again, this is a simultaneous discussion of, if this is the ADP right now, I'm going to take Brock Purdy all day. But that being said,
if you look at it,
let's go to another position here.
Hold on, I just want to touch on this because Jamie brought this up, and it's a good question, is that when you look at Dynasty, for example, I absolutely do think guys like Herbert are still a really great grab, right? Because there's a potential that if he has like good games here and there, that he could show off. But it's that offensive line that gets me every single year. Every single year, his offensive lineman got hurt, and every single year they try to make it better. And every single year, the back half of the season is much worse than the first half, or the first half injury submarines his first half, and then he has a good second half. You never get a full season.
What you're describing right now is one of the most important things to recognize, which is essentially organizational confidence and organizational stability. You don't have any in the Chargers, and there's certain other organizations that deserve no reason to have any faith or credibility in them. And this is where you get into certain areas. But I completely agree with you, Bob, that when we look at this and say, hey, Do we think the Chargers are going to figure out their offensive line? On the one hand, there's no reason that they shouldn't.
I mean, they have.
You never do.
They have the pieces to be successful. The problem is those pieces always get hurt. So like that's the biggest thing for me is that I know we can't predict injuries, but like it's reasonable to predict that there's going to be at least one or two offensive linemen from the Chargers that are going to suck or get hurt this year, right?
Well, with that being said, let's go into possibly the most offensive line dependent position.
I think he does.
Being the running back.
I think he does, bro. Oh, okay. So here's where I'm going with here. It's Bijan. It's Bijan number one.
Let's give the list for those who are watching on the TikTok version where it's harder to read. Bijan, Gibbs, McCaffrey 3, A-Chain 4, JTT, Cook, Genty, Hampton, Saquon 9, and then Chase Brown in at 10. You guys know me. You know I hate Chase Brown. But, Bob, I want to hear your starting point for where we're at here. And the reason is I think Chase Brown's going to get replaced in the offseason.
I disagree. So I look at these top 10 guys, and I don't see a problem with any of these rankings logistically outside of Genty at 7. Will I end up taking Genty in the top 10 of running backs? No. In best ball, will I take a chance? Yes, depending on the schedule. If we're talking about redraft, probably not, unless there is some major changes for the Raiders. And I don't mean Mendoza. I don't know. I don't think that will change how the Raiders organization will look on a field for Ashton Genty necessarily. But I think the winner of this whole situation of coaching so far is Bijan Robinson. Getting Kevin Stefanski as the head coach down there, I really do think with the way that they would want to run the ball and the way that they ran the ball in Cleveland at the very minimum, opens doors where Bijan is going to be able to just take it to the bank. And I think that
I would argue him and Pitts are the two biggest winners of that transaction.
I think that when we look at a guy like Gibbs here, where I said on broadcast, I feel you, family. When we said on the broadcast last week, where I said that if McDaniel goes to the Detroit Lions, that I'm taking Gibbs number 1. I'm no longer doing that, and I'm actually a little bit concerned about Jahmyr Gibbs going into next season. And it's not from a player capital perspective. It's not from a talent perspective. It's from the offensive coordinator perspective. Drew Petzing, you look at the Arizona running game this past year, and it was a mess due to injuries and et cetera. Last year, it was better because the coach that was basically the running backs coach went over to Dallas. And we saw Dallas's run game this year with Javonte Williams kind of revive itself in a way. So I'm not quite sure if Drew Petzing is going to be the guy for me for a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm still not going to pass on him if given the opportunity because there are more injury concerns with McCaffrey and or Achane. McCaffrey had a full healthy season, but also the running game did not look as good in the Niners for most of the year. There was a lot of pass catching that McCaffrey was doing, and that's fair. That's where his value is. And same with Achane. I'm really curious that the departure of McDaniel.
Yes, this is for the record, guys. This is redraft PPR rankings.
Yeah. This is redraft PPR rankings from Fantasy Pros. We're just kind of going through them. Family, I feel you on the Buffalo. I really was rooting for them. A lot of my teams were rooting for them as well. And when it comes to this Achane, is that I think the coaching staff who comes in is going to see what they have, and they're going to utilize him to the best of their abilities. So will I still be taking shots at Achane? Yes, absolutely. The concern here, absolutely, for me, is that Omarion, Cook, Achane, Gibbs, and Bijan, your 5 of your top 8, I believe, are going to have new coaches on either the OC or the head coach going into
and possibly San Francisco as well.
And that's a concern for me from that perspective of like, how will those coaches use their best weapon? Because arguably these are the best weapons on their respective teams. And having Saquon down there at 9 feels a little off to me. Because Saquon at 9, the Eagles are only a couple of pieces on offensive line away, and they realize that. And when you look,
they fix the trenches better than possibly any other organization.
When you look at what can happen from an offensive lineman perspective, there going into this year, there are going to be some decent to good offensive linemen coming as free agents this year. And I am very curious to see how Saquon over the entirety of best ball and redraft season climbs in the rankings, because I absolutely want to take more chances on Saquon this year at value over guys like Genty and over guys like McCaffrey, most likely. When it comes to the two rookies from this past year, Omarion and Genty, I'm really not about either of them at this point in time until we see the health of that offensive line for the Chargers and Genty. I think that this is too high.
You have to assume health for that offensive line of Chargers. I know that you get the whole big thing about organizational instability.
We can get into that again, but we don't have to. And family.
Well, my point is that's a justification to believe that Saquon will be able to take off because his line will be there. The one who I think is underrated.
And Cook, we didn't even talk about Cook. I think Cook is probably the most stable out of every single one of these running backs going into next year.
I disagree with that.
You look at the coaching of McDermott, and it was Joe Brady who really, gave Cook more looks. It wasn't McDermott necessarily. So
yeah, but Brady's fired. So
if Joe Brady wasn't fired,
he's fired when the new coach shows up. The old stuff will be gone.
And he might be the new coach. They might take him as the new coach.
We'll see. That's a stretch.
I'm not upset about the ranking of James Cook. Would I take Cook above Achane? I don't really know, because what we saw from James Cook is, yes, he can rack up those 100-yard games, but it's going to come with more tread on the tires. He's going to get 20, 22, 23 carries to get to 100 yards, and he's going to need those touchdowns to really hone in on a top 5 finish. Achane has the explosiveness. We're just not sure if he's going to get there with that. And like I said, I think that Barkley is the steal here. And if he stays ranked at people's 9th running back off the board, which is looking at 2nd round, 3rd round in possibly early best ball tournaments, it's not going to be crazy like that. People aren't going to do that. But I think that that's going to be a steal if that ends up happening.
If that would end up happening, that Barkley would be a steal. But the one that
I agree with that sentiment. Scroll down, Joe.
The one that is considerably underrated when we look at the situation for next year is Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is the only offensive weapon on the Colts for the first 8 weeks of the season.
Because but also, Pittman might go.
They're going to have
Pittman and Pierce are probably walking. Pittman and Pierce are probably either not too walking or walking. So
Riley is not a strong enough quarterback to move the ball around. Jonathan Taylor is going to start the year off much like this year, where it almost looks like an army attack, where they're going to have to move the ball in the ground consistently. The major difference is Taylor can bust off a big run. So I would rather have Taylor for September and October and then trade him. Like, that's already my redraft strategy. I know he's going to be overused in the first half of the year and then move him accordingly. And JT to me is the one that's really getting slept on for redraft rankings.
I would agree. I would agree that if you're going to get JT in the first round, JT is going to be a first round guy. It's going to happen. He's going to go probably around 8, maybe 10. Maybe he goes down into 14 because of the wide receiver situations. I want to take a look a little bit more at this 9 through 14, preferably 10 through 15. If you could scroll down a little bit more, Joe, there's a lot of pieces in this range, this 10 through 17 range, that there are a big amount of question marks there. Family, we'll help out after we look at this running back room right here for a minute. So there's a lot of question marks that I see here for 11 through 17. One of them being Kyren. Okay. Do I like Kyren? Yes. Do I think that he is the most efficient runner? No. Do I think that he is a powerful guy? Yeah. Do I think that they're going to utilize him? Absolutely. Would I want him where I might have to take him? Probably not. Trevion Henderson, I'm not interested on getting on the Trevion Henderson bus this early. He's going to have to fall to either the 4th or 5th round for me to want to take him, and that might not happen. Similarly to RJ Harvey. I do think that
Harvey's the one who does not belong with these
I
others.
do think that Denver figures this out, and I like RJ Harvey. I do. But the thing is if I have to take him all the way, like if you give me a question and you say that Saquon Barkley is tiered in the same tier with these early consensus rankings of RJ Harvey, like get out of my house. Like there's no way. And then you look at a guy like Josh Jacobs and Breece Hall, and I think Breece Hall, depending on the situation that he gets himself in, Breece Hall probably climbs just below Saquon Barkley and above Ashton Genty and Omarion Hampton for me because he's talented. He's really talented, stuck on a very poor roster. You look at Josh Jacobs, for example. Josh Jacobs is a guy that I'm not super interested in unless he stays on the Green Bay Packers, and the Green Bay Packers and there's no coaching staff changes because the Green Bay Packers have said multiple times, right? And LaFleur even said it as they were going in the halftime, said, I just wish we could run the ball more. He just wants to run the ball. He doesn't want to throw the ball with Jordan Love. So as long as he's a Green Bay Packer, as long as LaFleur is the head coach, I think that Josh Jacobs is well worth the price that you would have to pay this year to get him. Bucky Irving, super talented. I'm going to take chances on him at the turn, in the second round, or even in the third round if I get a chance. And it is very clear to me that Saquon, Bucky, Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall are head and shoulders in this tier above some of these guys. The wild card here for me in this whole, and I don't want to touch on Chase Brown today, but the wild card for me here is Derrick Henry. That this is a really low consensus ranking for a guy that's still breaking off 200 yards in a game. All right.
That's exactly it.
I get that Harbaugh's not the coach anymore, and I get that Monken might be out. But if you can give me Derrick Henry in the third round, perceivably.
Well, let's look at part of the reason Harbaugh was fired was they didn't give Henry the ball enough, particularly in game-winning situations. Henry is the steal of this top 16 or so. When you look at it, this is the range of 10 to 17 or so is where you find your league winner because they're underpriced. This is exactly where JSM was last year. The people aren't seeing them, and King Henry is that guy.
If you're sitting at the number one pick and he falls to you at the 2-3 turn, I'm smashing the like button on him all the time.
Oh yeah.
And to go back to Bucky, and family pointed this out when we were looking at the the free agents. Rachaad White is a free agent, which opens up opportunities. Yep. Will the offense look better with a healthy Baker Mayfield? Sure, right?
It'll definitely be better with a new offensive coordinator.
And I agree with this point too, where it is not necessarily that you have to fall off a cliff when you get to your 30s. It's just that's historically has what happens. But Derrick Henry is a special running back who's going to be treated, fairly on his team because he's a legend, a walking legend on that team. Scroll down just so we can see what the next tier is before we go over to wide receiver. So looking at this next tier, I want to say that immediately looking at this at 27, I think that Cal Monangai is going to climb. He looks really, really good.
Yes.
He looks really good, and they're going to use him a lot. I could see people taking more chances on Cal Monangai. Now, Sharps with an ACL chair.
Going to climb from 22.
Sharps with an ACL chair. I'm curious how that works out. Javonte Williams dealing with.
Yeah, Sharps going to fall off. That's because
you're gonna see at least one or two of these running backs on the Best Ball Mania league winning on the number one team that's going into next year.
Doubt.
You're going to see one of these running backs on the Best Ball Mania top team going into next year. Kenneth Walker is going to go to the moon. I agree with that, family, where if Seattle doesn't sign him back, there's going to be a team that picks him up, maybe the Jags even, right? If they want to move on from ETN, if they go Jags, oh my God.
Well, the point is the situation. The Seattle starting running back goes to the moon if it's not a split committee.
And then you look at it, and Jamie, this is the exact thing where what Joe just said about the tier 3 and the tier 4 here is that there are going to be players that people ignore. They just flat out ignore, just like people did to Jonathan Taylor, just like people glazed James Cook last year, just like people did with JSN as well. There's going to be some talent in there. And I'm going to be taking chances on Cam Scadaboo. I'm going to be taking chances on Kenneth Walker. I'm going to be taking chances on Judkins. The only the only player that I'm not really interested in this category, and there's two of them, is Rico. I love the way that Rico played midseason, but I'm just not seeing wanting to take him.
With Carolina, they used a first-round draft pick on a running back last year, and he just got hurt. I mean, that's the one who will be starting, the running back from Texas that they drafted in the first round 2 years ago. It's the way it is.
Yeah. And family, I agree with Warren as a pass, particularly if
I think he's a scoop and score.
Particularly if the coaching staff that comes in has shown a tendency to not utilize like one or two running backs. But here's the other thing too, and I talked with our friend last night when we watched the national championship game before you came, Joe, is that Caleb is still there. And they used really good capital to get into him. And I question, with Gainwell being a free agent going into this year, I question if the new coaching staff is going to utilize him or not utilize him. Because if you can get him super late, he might be a good play off of Jaylen Warren, where Jaylen Warren might be going a little bit higher. Yeah. When I look at it, a guy that, like, out of that whole list, like, yeah, I'm not really interested in Rico. And I know that DeAndre Swift had a good year, but like I'm seeing so much better with Kyle Monangai than Swift. And I just see them probably giving the ball a little bit more to Monangai. And, I just don't get.
I wouldn't be surprised if he trades Swift again. It would not surprise me if Johnson trades Swift again.
And then there's probably going to be a lot of value underneath Monangai, but let's go to wide receivers, Joe. To see what's happening, and then we can talk about those underneath 27 another time. And before we touch on wide receivers, let's answer family's question here. Before we do that, looking at dynasty deals, Stafford for a mid-second in 2027 in Vele. Do I let him retire on my team for that price? I mean, honestly, if they win the Super Bowl this year, he might retire off the rip. Like, there's a statistical chance that happens. Do I think that Vele is worth it? If they get a quarterback, sure. I don't know. I think I might do it because the 2027 class is very strong, and there's a chance that Stafford just might retire, like I said, after the Super Bowl if he wins it.
So if you do the trade now, you get something for nothing.
I would do it, family. But I think that Vele is one of those guys where he shows some pop this year, and we'll see how that goes, but I'm not sure it's sustainable. It's worth a chance, though. So let's get into the wide receivers, Joe. We'll get into that, family. I'll start your question there. So I've got no problems with the top three, okay? Just off the rip. If Stafford retires,
the top ones, of course, being Chase, Puka, JSN, Lamb, Amon, J. Jeff, Drake London, Malik Neighbors, Rashee Rice, and Nico Collins.
I will say I'm pumping the brakes on Rice because of the consistent domestic issues. I think that I can get him. I think that will be enough to push his value down in ADP that you might be able to tag him. That you might be able to tag him a little bit later. What I'm looking at here is a guy of Puka. And family, you brought my point up right there. I am taking Jamar Chase over Puka. I love Puka.
I'm not selling Puka under any circumstances, though. I'd take him
all day. I love Puka, but if I have the number one overall pick and I don't want Bijan and I don't want Gibbs, I'm taking Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase has the consistency, has the quarterback, has the same everything returning. We're going to know more about Puka's situation once this playoff situation rolls out.
Yeah. Mine was given Stafford. With Stafford, I'm taking Puka. Without Stafford,
I'm taking Puka. But even if Puka loses Stafford, he's still going to be top 5 guy that you're going to take. His talent is undeniable, right? When I look at it from a dynasty perspective, is Puka a sell high? No, I'm keeping Puka. If Stafford retires, but it directly correlates to Stafford. If Stafford leaves, it puts the Rams in a bad spot, and that is problematic to Puka's value, because Puka's one of those wide receivers that can get very frustrated depending on what he's doing in game and what the team is doing around him, and that concerns me because he's shown to be a little bit more prima donna-y than some of these other, than Jamar, than JSN. And I think that Jamar and JSN situations aren't going to change going into next year outside of the OC change for Seattle potentially. So, there is some question marks there. Would I sell Puka? If I could get, let's say I could get this year's first, next year's first, plus CD Lamb, plus something else, yeah, sure, I'd do that. Because you can get Jeremiah Love, and then next year you can get, Arch Manning or one of the wide receivers that comes out of Ohio State. So, I think that it would be worth it if you wanted to do something like that. It's a little bit crazy, but you're playing. I wouldn't do it yet. But going through, you absolutely could do something like that where you could get Amon-Ra, J. Jeff, and a first. The guy that I'm really concerned about here, though, family, is Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, you told me this all year. You told me here, don't play J. Jeff. Don't die on that hill. Don't die on that hill.
We talk about Justin Jefferson a lot. And Justin Jefferson is an elite level talent with a subpar offense. And we saw there are some major question marks for Minnesota, particularly if their defense, particularly if Flores and such, if the coaching staff switches up on defense. Now, I think that J.J. McCarthy can come around in due time, but in fantasy, there is no due time. You have no time. That's so, right. If I'm looking at taking a chance on Justin Jefferson versus Amon-Ra, I'm concerned about Amon-Ra's offensive coordinator as well, but I know that Dan Campbell, if shit goes haywire, Dan Campbell's just going to be like, just give the ball to Amon-Ra. It doesn't matter. This is where this Justin Jefferson, Drake London, Malik Neighbors, Rashee Rice, Nico territory is kind of, I'm going to be taking chances on all of them, of course, in best ball, but I'm probably staying away from them in redraft, and I'm drafting the opposite running back. Okay. So if I'm sitting there at like pick 8 and I have the choice between Justin Jefferson or Saquon, I'm probably taking Saquon. If I'm sitting there at like 14 and I have the choice between Nico and Bucky Irving, I'm probably taking Bucky Irving, to be honest with you, because I'm looking at this and I'm saying, Chase is absolutely the number one wide receiver going into next year. There is no, even though Puka had a great year, there is no question, undoubtedly, he is the number one player. If you don't want Bijan Robinson, he might be the number one player.
I got you.
Bijan
There's
Robinson.
No fight on Chase. I got you.
But I'm looking at this and saying the last wide receiver out of this grouping that I really logistically would pay a top 5 pick for is CD. Okay. Because I think although CD had a subpar touchdown season this year, there were some injuries in there as well. But you could convince me that Malik Neighbors might be a great buyback, but in the first round, coming off a major injury, I'm not sure I'm in on that. If he falls to the second round and I can take him at like pick 15, 16, sure, I'm willing to do that. Avoiding Rashee Rice for the moment. And Drake London is always an enigma. Is he going to be worth it? Maybe. No. Can Kevin Stefanski do something with him? Maybe. Do you want to pay a first-round price for him? Probably not.
No.
He had a great year this year, guys. That's undeniable. He had a great year this year. But
he also probably had his career high.
I think that I'm really not interested too much in buying Justin Jefferson at value, Malik Neighbors at value at this moment, and Rashee Rice at value at this moment. And if we go back down, I would, so for example, Joe, if you wanted to deal Puka family ass and you were taking anybody from that second tier, which 2 of those wide receivers would you want to take? If somebody said, I'm going to give you Puka and you can have any 2 of these wide receivers.
You're specifically limiting me for a dynasty question I get Puka a first round plus my choice of Lamb, Brown, J. Jeff, London, Neighbors, or Rice. I mean, obviously the answer should be Lamb, especially if George Pickens leaves. That's
probably going to be it's probably going to be Lamb and Neighbors for me.
No, to me it's either Lamb or Amon. I don't want any part of Malik Neighbors in a dynasty, and the reason for that is he is too little. He is going to break. He is the only weapon, and they have to give him the ball 15 times. That's great for September, but that is not great for winning your league. We're talking about winning a league. I know that Lamb's historically gets injured,
family,
but he's there in the playoffs.
If somebody had CD and Amon-Ra on their team, and you're like, "Hey, give me CD and Amon-Ra," they're probably going to just say no. No matter how
but you're going to get CD in the first or Amon in the first.
All right, so let's scroll down here, and then family, we'll hit up that Mendoza question when we after a little bit here. So here's my biggest issue with this set of rankings, and it's logistically tied. I don't have an issue with any one singular player necessarily in these rankings, but it's just necessarily with there's going to be a league winner coming out of this grouping of wide receivers, but the market on these wide receivers are going to be so in flux. This is primarily going to be what's going on in your third and fourth rounds.
Yeah, we were talking before about let people take them. That's Tet for me all day. Tet is overpriced.
Probably, family. I would say that out of this grouping of guys, there are probably 4 players that concern me. I'm going to name those 4, Joe. We can talk about them and just kind of think about this right here. Nico, number 1,
Fair.
Concern. Pickens, number 2, concern.
Olave, concern.
Olave, health, concern.
Yeah.
Okay. And then looking at it and saying Garrett Wilson, concern.
Well, he's the Jets, so you all should be concerned.
Right. And you look at this and say, these rankings are fair. This is a fair grouping of rankings based upon last season's performance. And looking at it and saying and projecting forward, you might say, okay, you might disagree with Tet. I would probably just take Tet over potentially Garrett Wilson, depending on the quarterback situation, because we know how he's been used this year, and that's most likely not going to change. I wouldn't be taking Rashee Rice over any of these guys, though, because it is such a flux situation for Rice. Chris Olave looked like a dog this year, Joe. The health concerns, the concussions, that is a big concern. But would I take more chances on Olave?
It is, and Bob, you're pointing out something that's really important because we know there's not going to only be 8 decent receivers in the NFL next year.
Right, absolutely.
Like, in this group, as much as there are scary potential, there is going to be gold mines between here and 40. And that's just the reality of it is.
But also,
some people. So when you're doing your best balls and you're getting more than 10 lineups, to me, this is the net you want to cast.
I agree, family.
The one I think is the one that I'm most confident in saying that they're going to jump up from where there's 2 on this page is Higgins and JMO. I believe in both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, JMO has really grown in terms of what he can do out of a route tree.
So
he used to just be a go right only.
Concern. Petzig is a concern.
I'm a believer in JMO.
Right.
Never thought I was going to get there.
Here's the other player that I didn't say anything about is A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown feels like he wants out of Philadelphia. If he gets into a situation where he is back to being the guy that they're going to throw 10 targets to, you're absolutely the value there, I think, is probably you're going to be able to get A.J. Brown most likely end of second, top of third. And I think that I am just as comfortable taking him as I am not taking Justin Jefferson in the first round. Because this grouping of guys all has its own upside, but the reason these guys are here are because of the multiple concerns with either their usage in their current offense, health, or free agency differentials, right?
Yeah, also, let's not ignore the fact that A.J. Brown took a legitimate step backwards on the field this year. He is not as talented as he was the prior season.
I won't disagree with that. But I will say that, like, if you're in a best ball league and not in redraft necessarily, I wouldn't draft him in redraft. But if I'm in a best ball league and he's falling to me at the top of the third round, and I already built out Bijan or Jamar Chase, I'm going to have a couple of those teams built in there. One of the guys that I'm probably avoiding, almost entirely, maybe exclusively, will probably be Ladd in this ranking of players. It's not that
will
I
take
don't.
the Chargers.
It's not that I don't like Ladd at all. But the fact of the matter is that when you look at, again, this all is based on health and Justin Herbert. Because what I'm looking at here is, I want to see a quarterback that's going to get to potentially 28 to 30 touchdowns. I don't see that out of Stroud, right? So Nico's kind of off my list for the moment. Can Shuck get there? Maybe, but it's going to come on the back of Olave. So yeah, definitely, right? But there's a lot of concerns just with me with that. Ladd is not their touchdown guy. And this year he wasn't even getting a lot of yardage for it to be like super relevant. And I don't really feel like I want to invest in that at this point in time in the offseason. Now, if he falls, let's say he falls, right? It could definitely, and to this point, family, if he falls and we want to buy,
if Keenan Allen retires, Ladd's value instantly goes up.
If we want to buy a Chargers wide receiver, I'm buying Trey Harris at a better value. Now, why would I do that? Again, it's just a value thing. If I'm looking at all these wide receivers and I have the chance to take T or Ladd, I'm taking T every day, and I'm waiting for Trey in the back half of this draft. If you ask me do I want Garrett Wilson or Ladd, I'm still taking probably more chances on Garrett Wilson than Ladd, depending quarterback situation. If you ask me Tet and Ladd, I'm still definitely taking Tet over Ladd. And I know you disagree with that, Joe.
Vehemently.
But it's just opportunities and situation. These are all constantly things that are in flux. But I do think that Ladd is one of those players that, because of that touchdown capital, it's just weird. It's like it's something that is really important to keep an eye on going into next season, because Trey Harris or Arondé Gadsden might be the person that develops as the touchdown guy over Ladd going into next season, just like we saw this year over like QJ, right? So scrolling down the rankings, I'm probably not going to have Devontae Adams this high in any of my, and I know last year Devontae Adams was my dude. I love Devontae. I love Puka. I love everything that the Rams do as an offense, right? But older.
Here's guys with upside, though. This group has some upside. I like this one.
He's not at the tail end of his career, but if he wins the Super Bowl, right, he's going to be a guy that is going to be used situationally, I think, moving forward, because you saw his health this year with those injuries. And they're going to utilize him in the red zone continuously, but it's going to be one of those players that I'm probably waiting for like the 6th round, 7th round to take a guy like Devontae if he were to ever fall. I'm looking here and I'm seeing Terry McLaurin, right? A guy that I absolutely can't stand buying in fantasy most of the time. But I think finally we have a potentially fair value for Terry McLaurin. And if I believe that Jane Daniels will be successful, and I'm willing to take Jane Daniels as a top 5 quarterback, then I'm absolutely buying Terry McLaurin. And you could see a lot of Terry McLaurin, Jane Daniels stacks at the 4-5 turn, most likely. I'm looking here and I'm seeing Mike Evans. He's probably going to retire. I don't really see him coming back and this ranking being worth talking about too much. Jalen Waddle's an interesting prospect to me, because this is all continuously assuming, again, Tyreek's not going to be there. McDaniel is not there anymore to just avoid Jalen Waddle when he's on the field. So
I think Waddle could be a home run hitter in this group.
I think that the value of Waddle and the value of Devonta Smith here are exceptional. So we're looking here at 21st, 22nd wide receivers. So we're thinking maybe this is looking at 4th, 5th, 6th round again. I'm definitely taking chances on that. I'm buying, like I said, I'm buying Terry, selling Debo. Cortland Sutton is an interesting player.
Isn't it amazing how Terry was like a 3rd rounder and now he's returning back to where he's always been, back to the 5th round? Some people just are what they are, and that's okay.
And I just want to touch on this, Joe, as we go through these wide receiver rankings, because I do think that they're super important.
Yeah, we do need to talk about Ayuk real quick, because
Ayuk is so interesting, because
Ayuk's not employable.
Juwan Jennings is potentially a free agent this year as well. Ricky Pearsall dealing with injuries.
Ayuk 100% is not going back to San Francisco.
I think it's interesting.
He's not going back to San Francisco.
And to your point, family, there is going to be one of these wide receivers that is 1,000% going to go to Buffalo. That's going to happen. And I think whoever it is,
it might be Ayuk, but he's not going back to San Francisco.
I think the most interesting players out of this grouping of guys is going to be Zay and Burden.
Yeah.
Not because their situations are anything like super exceptional, but they're tied to quarterbacks. Burden with Caleb, right? But again, when we talk about value, I'm probably taking more chances on Roma Dunze at a lower cost than Luther Burden at this higher cost. And Zay is one of those guys in best ball. Again, redraft I'm probably avoiding, but in best ball, I think Zay's value is fine because he has the chance to put up 32 points, 28 points, 25 points. It's going to change this year because of the change in the offense coordinator, but I think it's worth it. Scroll down, Joe. Before I touched on Cortland Sutton, I think Cortland Sutton is a guy that I'm not buying this year because we saw as the season went on that Denver could win games without utilizing his talents as a pass catcher to their utmost. So I think he's the red herring of that grouping there. Looking at this, I'm seeing a lot of players whose situations are going to change, or a lot of players that dealt with injuries this year.
Godwin is the dude who stands out to me that I want.
Or a lot of players that, if this is what your 6th, 7th, 8th round is going to look like, I'm loading up at running back early, and I'm taking 3-4 chances at some of these guys down.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like, I look at Emeka Egbuka, a guy that he fell off at the end of last year, and Jalen McMillan came back, and Jalen McMillan looks good, right? But I'm looking at Emeka Egbuka, and I'm saying, oh, I can get you wide receiver 28 potentially. Yeah, sure. Christian Watson, it's a little high for me, but I like him. Jacoby Myers, Brian Thomas Jr., yes and yes. Thank you very much. Ricky Pearsall, I bought Ricky at this price last year. The injuries derailed him. I don't like that price. Stephon Diggs.
I'll try him again, though.
Stephon Diggs, interesting at cost, right? Chris Godwin, Mike Evans retiring. Yeah, load me up on some Chris Godwin, please. Thank you very much. Roma Dunze, again, Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, yes and yes.
I don't want Harrison.
They can't get a
Harrison's the one who needs to go to Buffalo.
Joe, Arizona can't get a worse quarterback than Kyler Murray. So at minimum, they're going to stay with Jacoby Brissett. At maximum, they're going to get somebody that's better than Kyler Murray as a passer. So the value on Marv and the value of Michael Wilson will be extremely high this year. And if you want to take chances on them, I mean, seriously, this is you're going to see this shift drastically come draft. When drafts start kicking off.
That's why these early best balls are so fun to do for you guys.
This is going to change. And not to mention DK Metcalf potentially getting maybe a better quarterback. I don't know. I'm probably avoiding DK and Christian Watson in this grouping of guys, but I'd take more chances on Christian Watson than DK because Christian Watson is a value piece of that offense, logistically speaking. Right, Joe, pull back up those wide receivers.
As we're going to bring this episode here, we're just going to try to keep this somewhat around an hour.
Joe, I go back to the wide receivers before we go to tight end.
Here,
Joe, go back to those wide receivers before we go to tight end real quick, because tight end I think is going to be fast and easy. I want to get to that next ranking of wide receivers. So coming down here, then. Looking at this group of guys, this is the most question marks. Mm-hmm. This group has the biggest amount of question marks due to free agency, poor quarterback play, or no quarterback play, right? Out of this grouping of players, depending on where Pierce lands is interesting to me. I think Jaden Higgins, I would rather buy Jaden Higgins at this cost than Nico Collins at his cost. And you guys know.
I agree with that. I might be the biggest. You guys know
as a Nico stan, that hurts my soul to say that.
But it's true.
But if I can take Jaden at this cost, and even Noel at a lower cost with Kirk being a free agent, and even the PPR merchant Wandell, depending on what team he lands on, I think is going to be interesting. Do they bring back Juwan Jennings in San Francisco?
I think
Travis Hunter
does go back.
I'm not buying Travis Hunter. KJ, Joe just mentioned Jonathan Brooks.
I think Hunter's going to corner, and that's just what happened.
Joe, KJ brought up this question as we talk about wide receiver. I know we're not pulling out a lot of questions here today, but Jonathan Brooks.
I think Jonathan Brooks, KJ, is the play next year. I believe he's starting in Carolina day 1 through day last. He is the guy in Carolina. and Rico Dowdle was a placeholder.
So then you guys know my hatred of a guy like Khalil Shakir, but this is the appropriate cost for a guy like Khalil Shakir.
Yes, it is.
I'm not fighting that cost at all. I'm not buying Tyreek. I'm probably not buying DJ Moore. I'm going to probably stay away from Jordan Addison at that cost.
DJ Moore on another team might
be successful. Scroll down a little bit more, Joe, so we can see the top 55. Okay, so this is where things get a little bit sexy. Okay, there's a lot of players on this list.
Nothing sexy about Jerry Jeudy, man.
There's a lot of players on this list, and this list, typically speaking,
this is the best ball swing for the fences top of the line list, though.
Mm-hmm.
You hit off with Downs and Worthy, or Franklin goes off in a week. These are how you win best ball. These are the best ball players.
So
not the redraft guys.
I just want to go into previous one of the drafts from this past year. Okay, before we talk about the tight ends. And I just want to go into some of these. Let me load up the Best Ball Mania. Let's see where Best Ball Mania is. And just to kind of take a look and say, like, all right, like where we're getting like wide receiver 50, wide receiver 45, things like that. You're going to be getting a lot of potential value out of these guys. So, for example, when we look at the draft board from last year, right? And we say to ourselves, all right, 50 wide receivers in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And I'm in the fourth round, and there's about 20 wide receivers. So if we continue to do that, we're looking again at 7th, 8th, 9th round. Okay. 7th, 8th, 9th round for some of these guys. Parker Washington, yes. Give me more of Parker Washington. Give me more of Trey Harris. I'm taking chances on Trey. I'm taking chances on, and Dubs is going to be a free agent. I think Dubs is going to be a great free agent pickup for some people. Give me more of Jalen Coker. Okay, yes, please. I'm probably avoiding Adonai Mitchell, probably avoiding Josh Downs. Probably buying Xavier Worthy, not buying Rashid Shaheed. I think that's high. The Tennessee wide receivers, gross, right? But worth a chance. And as you scroll down further, Joe, and I know that we want to go on to tight end here, the guy that I'm really keeping my eye on is Jalen McMillan. He's a guy that I absolutely am very curious about going into next season if Mike Evans decides to retire and not come back. Jalen McMillan could be a very successful piece. Hey, Jesse, what's happening? And so I really think that that's going to be an important thing to look at. And Joe, let's pull up the tight end and let KJ know.
Yeah, KJ, to answer your question, I would be taking Brooks probably in the 3rd or 4th.
That would be funny.
So we go with the tight ends here. McBride is at the top. Bowers, Loveland, Warren, Kraft, Fannin, Laporta, Pitts.
Honestly, I have nothing negative to say about these early consensus.
That's pretty much the list, and you want one of the top 8.
I will not Joe. Can we see 10 through 15 for a moment, just to kind of allay?
The first ones are that black and white.
When I look at 10 through 17, this is your range.
It's amazing. Kittle was all the way down that. How long is Kittle injured for?
I don't know. That's something to look into. This is the range of tight ends where you look at and you say, I'm going to take these tight ends late.
I get it. I take it back. You don't need one of the top 8 because there's really not that much difference between Schultz and Henry versus the middle of that 6, 7, or 8. So
yeah, so I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself,
certainly a tier break though.
I just want to look and I want to see these tight ends because when I look at these wide receivers comparatively, go up to the top 5 again. And when I look at these wide receivers versus these tight ends, right? And I say to myself, okay, if I can build my team out logistically really well, and we talked about the value of top tier tight ends versus the value of waiting for a tight end, there are going to be so many people on the Colston Loveland bus this next year, and that's fair. I think it's fair. I think there's going to be a lot of people coming back on the Tucker Kraft bus because of the injury.
There should be.
And there should be. And I think that with Sam Laporta having a coach that just coached Trey McBride, I think that Sam Laporta actually out of these 7 might be a guy that, depending on the value that you can get him at, is probably going to be the one that you want to buy out of the 7.
And the perennial trap himself, Kyle Pitts, you can say the same thing about. In Cleveland, they force the ball to the tight end.
And looking down, Joe, going back down to that to 10 through 20, right, is I'm looking at, and even Isaiah Likely to a degree, right, is I'm looking at all these tight ends, and I'm seeing, and I'm going to go into just Fantasy Pros on the opposite side just to look at the scoring. And you're probably not going to see Pros weekly. And you're probably not going to see, outside of Trey McBride, right, a huge differential in season stats that are just going to
and you're not. And that's the point, is that these ones in the 15 range are just as valuable as the ones in the 10-7 range. Sitting on tight end again and popping 2 of them in the mid tiers is probably the play for best ball again.
So what we're looking at here is a guy like Schultz went off for 177.7 points. And that was Colston Love. He was ahead of Colston Loveland this year. You're looking at AJ Barner, not even listed in the top 17, okay, who is going to be a guy potentially going into next year with 147 PPR points. You look at an average, and again, AJ Barner's averaging 8 points, so that's not a great average. But if you go into the top 10 with average, this is what it looks like. Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, George Kittle, Tucker Kraft, Kyle Pitts, Dallas Goedert, Sam Laporta, Fannin, Kelsey, Warren. That's the top 10. Who's sitting right outside the top 10? Jawan, Ferguson, Henry, Schultz, Kincaid. Brenton Strange is sitting there too. Oronde Gadsden is at 8, coming on halfway through the season. And then we know that the Rams are going to use 3 tight ends again. And hey, by the way, Cade Otton is one to put up 22 points if he comes back too, if Mike Evans is going to retire. So as I look at it here, there's a tier break for sure after Gadsden. But the fact of the matter remains is that none of these guys if I'm comparing them necessarily to, if I have to take Trey McBride in the first round, which I probably will do at times in best ball, you will see me doing that. If I have to take Trey McBride out of that equation, right, is that I don't really see a fundamentally big difference between these guys and the guys above it, which makes me say that I am way more comfortable taking more shots at that tier of wide receivers that we talked about, and taking more shots at the tier of running backs as well, rather than going after one of those big tight ends. That I could absolutely see myself, like taking Laporta, let's say in the 8th round. But again, the problem is that we know, historically speaking, that drafting a tight end from round 3 to round 8 really is no fundamental difference than taking a tight end in round 15. You just have to be right on that round 15 tight end, and I think that's something to keep an eye on.
It's the way to play the game correctly. And guys,
before we go, I want to just touch on these last couple of comments here.
Yeah, KJ, obviously in the comments, guys, we didn't answer as many as we normally do. Today was really meant to be more of a rewatch kind of episode.
I do like Fannin. I do like Fannin a lot, but at cost, I don't. How do I feel about the interception call in the Bills game?
It wasn't an interception.
Joe Burrow will tell you it wasn't. Joe Burrow will tell you many things. But I would tend to believe that the game was called the way it was. And unfortunately, we can't come back from that. There was a bad call in the New England game too.
So they didn't lose the game because of the interception. They lost the game because Josh Allen had 5 turnovers, that being one of them. But that still was not an interception.
And that's the thing. It's like, how many of you starting every week and are 100% happy about when it comes to tight ends? That's the thing. We talk about this all the time. It says you are either paying for Trey McBride, right? You're either paying for Trey McBride or you're not. And
yeah, you're overpaying for McBride or you're not. And
if you
in the
want to
world
pay
of
for Brock
basketball,
Bowers,
since you're
if you want to
afforded
pay
the
for Brock Bowers,
luxury,
fine. But that's not my bus. But starting next week, we are going to be getting some big boards, little boards going on Underdog. They're going to be starting that tournament. They typically start it right during the conference championship. So we're going to get into that a little bit early. We're going to get into the weeds early, talk a little bit more about how these ADP rankings are shifting. Just as this early part of this best ball season comes in, you're going to see some players that you can get a lot of value on right now. And I think that when we get into that next week, we'll also have all the reactions from the championship games. If I'm gonna pick a winner from these championship games, I've got Seattle, unfortunately, Jason, and I'm probably going to take the Patriots just by process of elimination. I don't think that Jarrett Stidham is going to be able to propel the Broncos offense to be any better than they have been all year. The only thing that's preventing the Patriots winning that game would be the Broncos defense. And if the Broncos defense can generate 2 or 3 turnovers on Drake May, I think that the Broncos can win that game.
Let's not forget Stevenson loves fumbling.
It's gonna be Seattle for me. If the Rams can perform as they did against Seattle late in the season this past year, then the Rams have a definitive chance to make it. But this Rams team is banged up. They're not as healthy as they were in that game, I would say. So like outside of Devontae Adams, right?
So,
but
Bob and I disagree about how the NFC Championship is going to go, but we both agree that the winner of the NFC Championship is getting the Lombardi. So, guys, we appreciate you being with us today. Today was mostly a go through the format, and then we'll answer questions more so in the future. Obviously, we'll be
back next week.
Questions in our future drafts, and we'll see you guys next week, guys. Enjoy championships.
Peace out.